Hi, it's Gordon. I'm the happiness guy, and this is a video to help you understand you better so that you can behave how you want to behave and start to get outcomes and results that you can't get. So, for example, if you struggle with procrastination, this video is going to be really useful for you. If you struggle with motivation, therefore, it's going to be really useful. If you struggle with kind of feeling overwhelmed at times, it's going to be really useful. If you find yourself overthinking, it's going to be really useful. If you self-sabotage, if I haven't said that already, then, or you feel that you're self-sabotaging, it's going to be really useful. And if you sometimes struggle to understand why others are behaving as they are, it's going to be really useful. It's the single biggest, most important piece of, if you like, behaviour science that I know. But when we break it down, it's quite simple. And once you know it, you can't unknow it. And it's the most useful thing. So let me just let's just go through it. So what I'm going to talk about is called Triune Brain theory. So Triune Brain, not easy to say. Triune simply means 3 in 1. And the idea behind this kind of model, which kind of was developed in the 60s, is that we don't have one brain, but we've actually got 3. Now, although of course technically we only have one, it's that the brain's evolved and that we started off with one, imagine it as the original house, and then over time we added on an extension, and then we added on another extension. So, and as the brain's evolving, it keeps a lot of the old hardware, if you like, but it builds on some new stuff. So that's the idea. So we've got these 3 brains. We'll draw together but then segregate. So that's a brain stem. And they represent different stages in evolution. So the reptile, the mammal, and the human. So we'll come back to that. But if we then look at kind of like the primary function of the brain, well, what's the main thing the brain's designed to do? And most people won't get the answer kind of first off, but really it's all about survival, of course. It wants to keep us alive. So therefore what it's interested in is there some kind of threat or stress in the environment? So what's threatening or stressful? So that's what your brain is primarily interested in above all else. And so therefore, anything at all that represents a threat or a stress, and part of your brain is going to take over and run the show. And that part of the brain is called the amygdala. And the amygdala is this cluster that is always looking out into the world and thinking, am I safe? And can I predict a favourable outcome? And of course, with the can I predict a favourable outcome, it's either yes, no, or you don't know. Alright? And dependent on what that answer is, depends on which part of your brain is going to run the show. So, if it's yes, you get to stay in the human part of the mind. But if it's no, then you go into fight, flight, or freeze. You're going to go into fight, flight, or freeze. What does that feel like? What are the characteristics of that? Well, I think most of us have heard of fight or flight. Fight if you think you can win, flight if you think you're going to lose, freeze if you're not too sure what to do. It's a bit of a kind of rabbit in the headlights. But what's it like? Well, a few things happen. With fight, flight, or freeze, cortisol gets released, and that's job. That chemical makes us feel bad, and it says pay attention to this. So it directs our focus. Cortisol directs our focus. We often get adrenaline released as well. And adrenaline makes the effects of cortisol stronger, so we feel worse. And of course, adrenaline and cortisol in the system is exhausting from an energy perspective. So often we're very tired. It makes us dumb. it takes offline this human part of the mind called the prefrontal cortex, where we've got things like kind of logic and creativity. Let's say you struggle with willpower or discipline. Even emotional regulation gets taken offline. Emotional regulation gets taken offline when you go into fight, flight, freeze and you don't think that you can win, which is why we can overreact. So it's very reactive, of course, very powerful and fast. Doesn't respond to logic or reason. When you're in this part of your brain, when the amygdala is running the show, you're only interested in the now. So you can behave in a way that is damaging for you in the future. And this is where this idea of self-sabotage isn't really self-sabotage. So let's say someone's overweight, they come home and they're feeling bad for one reason or another. Maybe they've not eaten enough all day, maybe they've had something kind of emotionally that's challenged them, but they come home, the first thing they do is they start eating. Are they really trying to make themselves worse? Are they trying to sabotage? No, they're not. They're trying to make themselves feel better. So this little part of the brain called the amygdala is not trying to command behaviours to make you feel worse. It's positive in intent, but often it's things that it does have got benefits maybe in the now, in the short term, but no benefit and actually harmful in the long term. And I think that's just useful kind of to have a little think about that, because when we're in this part of the brain without a concept of the future, it's not that we don't care about it, it's like it doesn't exist. Reptiles had no knowledge that they were going to need to do something 2 weeks on Thursday, for example. They weren't thinking about that. They can't think about that. The brain's not designed for that. So these are kind of some of the characteristics of what happens when we go into fight, flight, freeze. And the amygdala, just kind of to add a little bit of detail to it, sends a signal to the basal ganglia and it says, right, we're in threat, this is sort of the situation. And the basal ganglia is the automation centre, the habit centre, and it says, or when I say it says, and it then runs the program for when this, then that. When I come home after work and I feel this, then that. When I get to a Saturday night and kind of I'm not going out and I kind of like feel stressed out or whatever, then that. When I get a credit card bill through, then that. So it's all automated. It's unconscious, and that's important because if you're going to change something, you need it to be in your conscious mind. Now, there are ways to move it from the unconscious to the conscious. Consciousness, obviously, we'll kind of think of the mind more for that. So it's conscious up here. So reptile, fight, flight, freeze. What would a reptile do under threat that it thought it couldn't win with? It would run away and it would go into isolation and it would spend a time on its own. And when it came back out, it'd be quite tentative. It would be a bit worried. It would be thinking, am I safe? And it would be looking around. So it'd still be a little bit wary. And what happens with our brain over time is that if we've either had a big threat or a series of big threats, or of course even a series of small threats, but they're persistent over time, the amygdala gets bigger. So the amygdala grows and develops stronger connections with other parts of the brain. And that means that we can literally change who we are. So how we look at the world changes. So we do become negative or pessimistic, overly so. But we really believe it's true. And it's because the amygdala is doing something called it sets hedonic tone. And hedonic tone, if I describe a little bit about my hedonic tone, if I go back the way, I was overweight, I owned a gym, it wasn't going well and I couldn't see a way out of it. I was in a relationship that was causing me pain, even though kind of we were both nice individuals, it wasn't working either. So my hedonic tone, I was looking at the world and thinking people are selfish, nobody cares. I really believed that with every fibre of me. But a number of years later, with that not being the case, and now kind of in a business doing what I love, my hedonic tone is completely different. I see the world completely different, but the world is not massively better than it was a few years ago. It's just that I see it as it's much better than it was a few years ago. So hedonic tone changes who we are if we're under threat for too long. Now, before we go into kind of too much more detail, let's just say that the amygdala, it was designed for physical threat. And the physical threats that a reptile would have would be different to the ones for a human, but for a human, here's the things that will put you into threat. So you could have poor sleep. Blood sugar can be too high or low. Pain, illness, dehydration. All of those things put you into physiological threat. And if you're in threat, you're not going to be able to stay fully conscious and have all your resources. This is going to start to hemorrhage energy out. So that was what the amygdala was for. It was to deal with physical threat. So if we've got some kind of illness, or we've got the cold, or and we haven't eaten for hours, we lose access to the human mind that's interested in the future. And this more primal part takes over and runs the show. All right. So that's physical threat. Let's just look at a kind of, I guess, a little bit more then. So there are 4 categories of things that take us into threat. And that can be things going too fast, things going too slow, things being uncertain, or things being overwhelming. Okay, so whenever you're looking at life, you can, if you're not feeling how you want to feel, if you're starting to react in some way, then you can think, well, what is it that's moving too fast for me? Or what's going too slow? Where am I not getting the progress that I need, feeling that I need? Or what am I uncertain about? Or what's overwhelming? So you can actually start to look at it and go, which of these is it? Because later we're going to want to develop a plan for this. So what's too fast, what's too slow, what's uncertain, what's overwhelming? Because it'll always be one of those or a combination of those. So it'll allow you to pinpoint it rather than, I just don't feel how I want to feel. Why not? Your answer's going to be in there somewhere. And although it might not relate to the physical, very often for us it relates more to the emotional or the mental. So what do I mean by that? Well, I said that the amygdala was originally designed for the reptiles to keep them safe and to keep them alive. But actually, when we look at kind of safety and what represents threat, then for the mammals, a different set of things represented threat. So really the main thing for the mammal, and I'm going to need to get a new pen for this, the main thing for the mammals is social hierarchy. And think emotional needs. And we could actually, I guess, add to that, given that we're human, social and professional hierarchies and emotional needs. So it's like, am I where I feel I should be? Am I connected? Am I loved? Kind of, do I feel that there's people around me? And if we are where we feel we should be, and if we feel that our emotional needs are being met, we can stay in the human part of our mind. But if we're not, if we don't feel that, then again we react. We move back into this amygdala-driven kind of part of the mind, and it runs the program. Now, one of the problems with the reptile and the mammal, and why kind of them evolving at different times, kind of one of the problems there is that the reptile, when it's in threat, it wants to be on its own, and mammals, when they're in threat, they run away together. So when you're in threat or stress, what do you do? Because it's my experience that most people pull away. And when they pull away, they make the threat worse because they're doing what the reptile wants, but they're not doing what the mammal wants. And you're more mammal than reptile. So we put ourselves into this additional threat and we create additional emotional distress. You know, so we need to be surrounded by people we love. So as a really actionable point, if you're in stress or threat, stop pulling away. Get around people you love. You'll create less stress and threat in the situation and get out of it faster. So that's the mammal in kind of in its role, and you only really get to meet the human if the reptile and the mammal are happy. So let's say that physically you're fine, emotionally you're fine. Now we're into the human part, and of course the human mind makes us fantastic, and it's done so many great things, and is responsible for so many great things. But it does have one kind of thing that creates threat to it. It's got one hell of an imagination, and it's prone to overthinking, and there's a negativity bias. And so this is where again I see an awful lot of threat coming up. It's like, even if there's nothing to worry about, we might be, especially if our amygdala has grown and changed, well now we're kind of maybe more negative than we normally would be. So we'll be thinking, well, things are okay just now, but what could go wrong? And again, that's just the amygdala being overdeveloped and and too used to running the show. So overthinking is a form of threat when our brain is just so busy. So most people, when they're thinking about their health and well-being, they think about the physical health or their mental health. But really, I think we should break it up and go physical, mental, and emotional, because they're a bit different. You know, your head's in one place, your heart's in another place, your body's I guess another one. So we've got these three areas. So if you're not feeling how you want to feel, again, you can now start to look at it and go, well, what is it? Is it physical? Is it mental? Is it emotional? And within each of these areas, well, what's happening? Is it too fast? Is it things going too slow? Are things uncertain, or are things overwhelming? And if things are going too fast, how can I slow it down? Or do more? If things are going too slow, how can I speed it up? If things are uncertain, how can I improve my certainty? How can I get better at this, or be more assured of a better outcome? And if things are overwhelming, what can I strip away and put them into some kind of order where I forget all of that for today and focus on this and get some progress? And I'll show you why that's important in just a second. So what goes on, if you like, just to kind of quickly summarize, if there's a threat, the brain asks, can I predict a favorable outcome? If it thinks it can't, we go into fight, flight, freeze, and that's obviously kind of exhausting, and we're not really in charge of ourselves. And what we're trying to do, of course, is stay in our human mind, because this is where we're great. This is the life that the life that we love. So we've got to look after our physical, our mental, and our emotional, if you like, fitness, or kind of capabilities. So let's say you've had a brain, you've been stressed out for a long period of time. Well, of course you've had a brain. You've been stressed out for a long period of time. How do you get back to being yourself? How do you get back to reacting less and to settling down and to be calm and present in the moment and all of that, and able to show up and do the things that would benefit your future? How do you do that? Well, you have to settle down the amygdala, and you have to then shrink it. So there's a few different ways to do this, or in fact there's many different ways, but as an overall structure, we need a plan, some kind of strategy. Many people stop at that. That's not enough. It certainly helps them feel marginally better in the short term. They spend loads of time in planning, but they don't implement. So we then need implementation. We need to do something. And let's say that emotionally we're not feeling how we want to, then maybe it's just see our friends more. And that helps a lot. Or maybe we're overthinking, so we learn to meditate, so we stop overthinking quite so much. And that helps a lot. So we need a plan, and we need to implement. And as we implement, the key thing is the feedback. That is how the brain changes. If you never take action, your brain never then gets a chemical response to that action. And so the amygdala doesn't kind of feel any better. But if you take action and you've made some progress, you can start to think, maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel, and your confidence goes up, and your fear, and really I can't believe it's the first time I've mentioned that word in this, your fear, which is so often running the show, not helpfully, starts to settle down. And you can get to become back into this purposeful part, if we put that over here, back into this purposeful part of your brain. So, anything to add to that? Maybe just, I could or I couldn't, but there's one last thing, I guess, because I'd almost forgotten it. This is all to do with your central nervous system, kind of the CNS. And your central nervous system, you're either in the sympathetic part, which is where the fight, flight, freeze happens, and that's where you're going to burn out, or you're in the parasympathetic part, where you're kind of nice and relaxed and calm and all of that. And that's what you're really looking to try and do. So you're looking to do things that help you feel better. So yeah, just kind of, I guess I wanted to kind of throw that in because I had missed it. So that's what's going on. That is what's driving your behaviour. That's why you sometimes don't behave like best you. That's why you're overreactive. When you think, I'm a failure, I should be able to do better at this, that, or the next thing. Really? I don't think so. This would say it's not your fault. Now that doesn't mean to say it's not your responsibility to then learn and adapt and do something now that you know. But when you're unconscious of what's going on and it's all automated and habituated, your conscious mind and your free will is not in control. So that's triune brain theory for you. Your mind keeps getting hijacked. It's your job to take control back and start to live a life purposefully you would love. So I'm dying to know what you think of this video. Let me know your thoughts, and I hope you've managed to stay with me because I know it was quite long. But I hope it's useful. Take care. Bye-bye.